Our Shawnee Chamber's Governmental Affairs Committee Eggs and Issues series. We are going to give it just about 30 seconds or so to log in. And we have most of our representatives online right now. So like I said, we'll give it about 30 seconds and let everybody log in and we'll get started. All right, I think that's enough time. We'll get started. And as I said here just a second ago, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Shawnee Chamber's Government Affairs Committee Eggs and Issues Series State Delegation with the legislators who represent all or part of our Shawnee community. My name is Joe Riedel with Straub Construction, and I serve as chair of the GAC, and I will be your moderator for this morning's virtual event. At this time, I would like to thank Evergy, who is a sponsor for all of our governmental affairs programming for 2021. Thank you, Evergy. We appreciate all your continued support. So at this time, we'll just get started and we're going to ask our senator and representatives to offer a few thoughts on what they see as major issues for the session and what they would list as major priorities in Topeka. Also, you might share what committees you will be serving during the session, and this will go about 3 to 5 minutes. Just kind of a side note here, couple of our representatives, Representative Neighbor out of District 18 and Representative Donohoe out of District 39. We think maybe having technical issues getting onto the call, but had agreed to be on the call. So they may chime in a little ways through. So anyway, so we'll get started with who we have here this morning. And we're going to go, it looks like in order of district number. So again, about 3 to 5 minutes here. Just talking about major issues for the session and what you'd list as priorities and in any committees you might be serving on. And as you see on the screen there, we're going to start with District 10, Senator Mike Thompson. Senator Thompson, thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it very much. And good morning to everyone out there. Yeah, it's I was in Topeka yesterday, and I know there were some concerns about protests. I know certainly Washington was a mess. But it was very respectful in Topeka. The folks that were there, by the way, had a permit. And I think there were 2 little old ladies that wandered into the Senate chamber and they carried American flags and everything was just fine. Senator Masterson, the new president of the Senate, talked to them. And so at least from the standpoint of here in Kansas, it was very much under control. Well, first of all, let me committees I'm serving on. I was named the chairman of Utilities Committee, so I'll be taking over that this session, which I'm excited about because here in Kansas, as you well know, if you've studied the electrical rates, we have some problems with our electrical rates. They're much higher than surrounding states, and we don't want to be running businesses out of the state. If you're running a fairly good sized plant, it can be significant, millions of dollars more for your electrical rates than if you move to some of the surrounding states. So that's going to be one of the issues I think we talk about. I'm also on Judiciary Committee. Judiciary, we're going to be having some appointees coming through. We also have to deal with the Emergency Management Act. I think the first priority early on in the Senate is going to be extending some of the provisions of the emergency management. Well, it was a House bill that we had extended the Emergency Powers Act, so we can deal with that, particularly with the telemedicine, some of the things that made sense in that bill. But we are going to be looking at amending the Emergency Powers Act and probably turning it into sections. The original act was designed for natural disasters like tornadoes. Really wasn't designed for a statewide pandemic or something like we've been experiencing for the last 9 months. And so we think that we need to make it more specific about getting people involved in the decision-making process a little bit faster. Health, I'm also on the health committee, and obviously there's been a lot of different things that'll come through there. People are worried about their health care costs. We'll be looking at some of the things that we can do to help keep that under control. And my final committee is the ethics and transparency. I'll be new to that committee, so it'll be interesting to see. I think one of the things we're going to be talking about, fortunately here in Kansas, we had very good elections. We didn't have the problems that they had in the Pennsylvanias and the Wisconsins and Georgias and wherever. But I think there are still some things we can do in the state of Kansas to shore up the election process, to ensure that everybody here is confident in our elections. And so that's going to be one of the big issues there. There's a lot of stuff coming down the pike. It's going to be an interesting session because while the Senate will be meeting in person, the House, and I think our representatives will be talking to this to some extent, will be virtual. So it's going to be trickier, I think, to run some of these bills through, maybe a little bit slower. We're probably, the Senate calendar is just 89 days. So we're going to have to rush to get some things done. The revisers and the legislative research people are also going to be working virtually. So it may clog up the works just a little bit, but I think that we'll be able to get some things done, and it all begins on Monday. So that's kind of a quick overview from where I stand, and I'll turn it back over to you, Joe.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Thompson.
Sure thing.
And moving on to Kansas House, District 17, Representative-elect Joella Hoye.
Good morning. I'm Joella Hoye, and on Monday I will be sworn in as representative for the 17th District of the Kansas House, which of course has parts of Shawnee and Lenexa and Lake Quivira. And I will be serving on the Federal and State Affairs Committee, Children and Seniors, as well as the K through 12 Education Budget Committee. I am definitely excited to be and honored to be entering this position. Can't say it doesn't come without some nerves going into legislating during a global pandemic, and I'm very appreciative of the actions that our leadership's taking right now to get it so that folks can have access to our committees and things virtually, so that there's still going to be participation in government as we work really hard to remain socially distant with our peers in the building. So I will be masked up and ready to go on Monday. I agree with Senator Thompson that some of our first orders of business are addressing the pandemic. Emergency powers are expiring at the end of the month, and we need to make sure that Governor Kelly retains the powers that she still has. There was a compromise there, and she still has authority to do things like extend driver's licenses, taxes, things like that, so that we can make sure that we are addressing the pandemic as safely as possible. And I think that is definitely a priority coming up in the session. I look forward to learning along the way, and I'm happy to answer questions as they come up.
Okay. Thank you, Representative-elect Hoye. Moving not too far away, District 18 House, Ms. Cindy Neighbor. And Cindy, I apologize. I understand there was some sort of glitch with your link. So thank you for your patience, and thank you for joining us this morning.
It is my pleasure. I had to eat my eggs and get my coffee so I could fit in for this meeting this morning, since it's eggs and issues. But to start out, I represent District 18, which is what I consider the heart of Shawnee, which is down a little bit more of the downtown business area, out to about 71st, 72nd over the county line, and over to Schweitzer. So it's a pleasure again to be a part of this group, and it is truly an honor. I will be serving on 4 committees this year. Again, I will be the ranking member on insurance. And in that particular area, I want to work on parity on insurance for mental health. We have a lot of people because of this pandemic that have more issues than we've had before, although mental health has always been a big issue here in Kansas to begin with. And it's even more so now with the pandemic. So we need to get the services to the people and make it as easy as possible rather than difficult. Second, I'm on elections and pensions. That's a new committee for me. Third, I'm on children and families. We still have a lot of work to do on DCF and also with our elderly, Alzheimer's, and nursing homes. And finally, I'm on energy and utilities. I've been on this for just about as long as I've been in the House. And I'm really excited that we are working on expanding broadband, because when we talk about revitalization of our rural areas and even close by Spring Hill, several districts have not had complete broadband availability. And so we are working on that, and it's a pleasure to try to get that out in areas since kids are going to school virtually and they need to use their computers, and but they have to have that capability. Some of the things that are going to happen in the House, not in the Senate, is right now we're going to be on the floor 1 day a week. And the rest of the time we'll either be in our office or we can attend committee meetings, all of which will be broadcast. They are all set up for that this year. And it is highly suggested that we wear masks. And it's my understanding that only 3 or 4 out of the entire House has said they won't do it. And so our House will be spread out. There'll be about 17 members of our caucus that'll be in the galleries and distance 6 feet apart. So it's going to be an interesting time, and I look forward to it, and I look forward to your questions. And I hope this year is just not quite as challenging as yesterday was in Washington. So thank you very much, and look forward to answering your questions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Neighbor. On to District 23, Ms. Susan Ruiz. Good morning. Yep, there you go. Got it.
Good morning, everyone. I was up very late watching all of the shenanigans that was happening out in the Capitol, and I'm not a happy camper all day yesterday nor this morning, so I'm hoping to be pretty civil today. I am Representative Susan Ruiz, and I do represent District 23, which is Shawnee, Lenexa, and Overland Park. The bulk of the district is actually in Lenexa, and the next section is Shawnee. Overland Park is there's just like 3 precincts within Overland Park. Some of the priorities that everyone has already spoken to, some of the things that we're going to be looking at in the legislature, and just again, probably the number 1 priority going in is to extend the governor's emergency powers, and we've several representatives have already spoken about that. We need to look at Medicaid expansion, and I think that's going to be another priority for us. And as we look to also increase revenue because of the loss of revenue that we've had due to COVID, we need to look at sports wagering. That was one of the things that was looked at the last session, but because of the pandemic, we weren't able to really look closer at that and seeing what we might be able to pass with sports wagering. The other piece would be to pass medical marijuana. That would be another priority. I know it's a priority for myself. I can't tell you the number of constituents who have asked us to look at passing medical marijuana. I think we should jump straight to recreation, but most states seem to look at medical marijuana first. Also, we need to continue to fund our public schools. We need to continue to value our public education. We need to, and that's another way of supporting our economy. And it's also one of the biggest ways for us to continue to develop or support workforce development for all of our communities. Redistricting, of course, is going to be another issue, but that'll, of course, that can't start till we get the census. And so right now, we don't know when we're going to get our numbers for the census yet. On the committees that I'm on, I'm going to be the ranking minority chair for the Veterans and Military Committee. That committee did not do a lot of work during the last session. And but one of the things that I would want us to go ahead and continue to look at, and that is to create a veterans home or a nursing home for our veterans in the Northeast area, a part of the state. I had conversations with families during the last session who were a bit upset about having to look at their loved ones going to move to a veterans home towards the maybe southwest part of the state when they live here in Johnson County. If we had one in the Northeast, we wouldn't have to separate our veterans from their families. Their families need to continue to be a part of their lives. And when you move a veteran 5-6 hours away from where their family lives, that makes it much more difficult for them. So trying to look at home, there was a bill for that. It was stopped in committee. So I think we will see another bill coming forth for a veterans home. I'm also on the Health and Human Services Committee, and that'll be a new committee for me. And I'm also on the Social Services Budget Committee. I was on that committee during the last session. I'll also be on call for the CanCare Oversight Committee. So I'm sure that there will be some things that'll come forth that committee will need to come together. I want to say a little bit more also about telemedicine. That has been a big revenue enhancement for our community mental health centers across the state. There are 26 community mental health centers. We have our Johnson County Mental Health. They have been able to charge for telemedicine and been able to recoup some of the revenue that they have lost with that. And especially when you look at people who are trying to get therapy, individual therapy, and not being able to physically go into a building to receive that therapy. So being able to do that through telemedicine, that was one of the things we were able to extend through the governor's emergency powers. And so that is something we want to continue. But I think we want to look at beyond that. We want to look at being able to continue to do that beyond the pandemic. So that'll be another thing that hopefully it'll come out of the social services budget or the Health and Human Services.
Okay, and again, thank you, Ms. Ruiz, and thank you for being here this morning. Next, we move to Representative Owen Donohoe, District 39, and like Representative Neighbor, we had a glitch with his link, so apologize for that, Representative Donohoe, but thank you for joining us this morning, and take it away.
Thank you. You didn't need to mention that because I thought it was us, so I was feeling guilty. So if it was you guys, that's good as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, glad to be here. Glad to get some information on what's transpiring and everything. I too watched the happenings in Washington yesterday, and from my perspective, I saw one of the most astounding things I think I've ever basically experienced or watched. And I told some people this, but I watched as this is the House of Representatives and the Senate, and I watched two guys, one guy with a stick and one guy with a shield, get access, break a window, and get into the Senate and the House. I was just astounded that anybody could that easily get access when they knew, that there was going to be a large crowd, let's put it, and everything, and to not be any more prepared than that. I mean, it's just incredible. But that's what we have, I guess, and hopefully we can get this thing behind us and get together and get moving and everything. So basically, I'm back. I have 3 committees this year. Last year I had 2 committees. This year I'm on 3 committees, and social services with Susan. I'm back in it. One of the things that I want to do and have been trying to do, and I did when I was in the legislature before and then left and came back, was to try to get full funding for the intellectually and developmentally disabled individuals. They are covered by Medicaid, but they are not funded completely. And so there are services they're not, that they're not getting because we don't fully fund that. And, we expand Medicaid, but yet we're not even paying for the people we have. So I have a little concerns. Last year, we got $22 million additional added to the budgets, and then it was taken away by the governor in budget cuts and everything, reductions because of the pandemic. And I got to believe there's other places we could have cut as opposed to the 22 million that we cut from that. By the way, I'm really wearing a mask because this is my business and people come in and out and everything. So I normally wear a mask here, but that's the only reason for it. So I'm on the social services. I'm on rural revitalization, which has really changed this year. It's financial institutions and revitalization. So they're trying to encompass a little bit more, I guess, in there. And obviously through financial institutions, I think the idea being to financially, have some ability to help with the financial crisis that we have out there. Broadband being a big part of that. We need to get broadband taken care of, and I know that there's some funding going to that and the intention to get that taken care of. And this year I'm on education, which proves that I guess you can get back into the fold if you behave yourself. So I'm looking at it like that. And so I've been on education before. I'm glad to be back. And I think there's a lot of things we can look at and do. As I've always said, my goal is to have the #1 outcomes in the nation at the most reasonable cost. And that doesn't mean the cheapest cost. That means fiscally the best policy that we can utilize to get those outcomes and do it effective and efficiently. So, my #1 thing, as I say, is to get funding for these individuals who are intellectually and developmentally disabled. It's incredible that this happens, and listening to the parents and everything of what transpires, I just don't understand it. But anyway, we'll be working on it. I know other people have worked on it and tried to do things. So that's, the major thing that I see that I want to accomplish, along with, obviously, one of the things I think we need to address is the vaccination, what's transpiring. Kansas is not doing, let's say, as well as they could or should be doing, maybe. I'm not going to point any fingers because there's a lot of moving parts in this thing. And I just think we need to come up with a bipartisan solution and get this moving faster, better, quicker. what's transpired. I know there's a announcement on Thursday by the governor to prioritize or to how they're going to proceed in this, which is good. So I think that's very important that we get this thing moving, and it'll help in the session, because obviously if we were all immune, things would go a lot smoother and a lot easier and a lot less costly. So I think it's something we really need to move forward on also. So that's about it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Representative Donohoe. And thank you all for your updates and your overviews and kind of a preview into what's coming up. We know, especially in these unprecedented times, that we've got a lot of hard decisions to make this year. So once again, we all, on behalf of the chamber and the businesses that are members of the chambers, we want to thank you all for your service and being here today. So with that, we will move into the questions portion. So I don't think you were on the phone, Representative Donohoe, in the beginning, but we're just going to go in reverse order now. Since you spoke last in the updates, the overviews, you're going to go first on the questions. I think we have 5 questions here. So we've got about 30 minutes left on our scheduled time, I think. So, we just ask that you be concise. There's no exact time limit, but be concise in your answers. So anyway, moving on. So first question, at the top of the list for many businesses in Kansas is how to begin to recover from the COVID pandemic in 2021. What is your vision for assisting Kansas businesses with economic recovery? Please be as specific as you can on what action you would support the Kansas legislature taking. So, and again, Representative Donohoe, we'll let you start with that one.
Yeah, one of the things I thought about a lot, and we kind of do a blanket closure. In other words, all the restaurants are closed or all the bars are closed, or this type of thing. And there's really no ability for an entrepreneurial solution by individual owners. Now they have an individual business, but they're lumped in with everybody and said, okay, this category of businesses is closed. Well, you may have a situation where an individual is running an outstanding facility and has minimized the risk substantially more than other places. How does he get recognized, or how does that business, or how does she have the ability to say, no, look at this facility and judge me on what I'm doing? And I think this, it gives the incentive to everybody. First of all, if you're doing a great job and you spent money and you've done all these things to improve it, so there's minimal, if any, risk, then you should be rewarded for that. Secondly, it's an impetus to other businesses of the same to say, well, wait a minute, they're open. How did they get open? Okay, this is what they did. Okay, we have to look at it. And the thing is, like I mentioned, there's a lot of individuals who go around and evaluate, fire. There's people that go in and like restaurants and evaluate if they're up to code and all that type of thing. So there seems to be maybe a number of individuals out there that we could task with saying, okay, here's some people who have asked for the ability to evaluate their business. Let's look at it and see if that's feasible to have them open. It just, to me, if I was a business owner, I would want the ability to do everything and make it possible that I've minimized everything to the extent I could be open. So that's one of the things. And that's just one type of business. The same thing could be applicable to other businesses.
Okay.
So that's one of the things I'd like to see.
Okay. Thank you.
Considered. Thank you.
Thank you. And moving on to Representative Ruiz. Would you like me to repeat any part of the question, or do you have it?
I think I have it.
Okay.
If I wonder, just bring me back.
All right.
So, we're looking at recovery, recovering, helping to recover business, or helping businesses to recover in 2021 due to the pandemic. When we start looking at like the stimulus incentives that have come through the feds, I am hoping that the next administration is going to look at that and look at reducing some of the requirements that are part of that. I think there are some cities, and even in Johnson County, who are having difficulty helping companies or businesses being able to not just access those funds, but being able to do whatever you have to do in order to get the funds. And so there's a lot of there seems to be too many steps involved, and it needs to be easier. It needs to be quicker. Businesses need to be able to tap into those incentives right away and be able to utilize those. So anything that we in the legislature can help to reduce some of that, I think would be something that we really need to look at. Again, I talked a little bit about other things, because I'm also looking at long term. Short term, we would be looking at those stimulus incentives, but long term, let's look at passing medical marijuana. And there's a lot of revenue to get there. Not just revenue. There's so many jobs that'll come with that. Looking at the sports wagering, I think there's some things that we can look at that also. Looking at being able to cities to recoup the when you purchase things online, and being able to recoup the tax from that. I think we need to be better about that. So those are the three primary that I can think off the top of my head.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Next up, Ms. Cindy Neighbor.
Thank you very much. We have had federal dollars come into the state, and I know of at least 2 or 3 people that applied and received that help, which really allowed them to keep their employees and upgrade some things that they needed to do for safety against COVID. But there's so many businesses that money went so quickly that a lot of people didn't have time to apply for it. We need to make those funds a little bit more available to small business owners, not just large business owners, to facilitate their ability to maintain their business, but more importantly, their employees. I think it's going to be a very difficult time right now. The other thing is, I think businesses have to be ever vigilant in requiring the safe distancing, the masks, and I know there are feelings on both sides of that, but at the same time, we have to do our part if we're going to be able to help these businesses get back to where they were. And I don't think it's going to happen in the first 3 months. It's going to take a while. And if we can get the vaccines ramped up, I think that will help some too.
Okay, thank you, Representative Neighbor. And next, Representative-elect Hoye.
Yeah, well, the businesses, especially small businesses in our state, are going to be the drivers of our recovery. So I am going to echo what's been said here, that as CARES funding comes into our state, when we're distributing it, there have been some states and instances where they don't even get applications that for enough that we have the amount for. So we do need to make sure that the fund is accessible. The funding is accessible to our businesses here. I know it's been mentioned about vaccines. I believe the vaccines distribution, wearing masks, and maintaining our social distancing is going to help keep us open, help drive the spread down. And I know it's also been mentioned about broadband and technology, and making sure that we continue to prioritize that infrastructure is going to help us to continue to be able to operate on this type of platform as well. So I'm going to be very supportive of making sure that we are prioritizing our businesses and industries in the state as we get those funds, and we'll be fighting to make sure that we do indeed bring those funds to our state.
Okay, thank you. We'll finish this question with Senator Mike Thompson.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, a lot of different things have been brought up here, and I think one of the big concerns. Actually, I'm going to kind of tag on to what Representative Owen Donohoe said. The uncertainty with the situation that was created for businesses was, in my opinion, a big problem. That's why we need to really look at the Emergency Management Act. In my opinion, no business should have been deemed non-essential. And, you know, a lot of the smaller businesses were able to comply with what we did with the big box stores and still stay open. Nevertheless, I know in our district, there are a number of those smaller businesses that were forced to close. And I think that was a travesty. We lost a lot of jobs. We lost a lot of revenue because of that. And so if we can redo that Emergency Management Act in a proper way so that businesses have confidence that if they comply with certain bullet points, for example, that they can stay open. The other thing I think is we've got to give people the confidence to get back out there and re-engage in the economy. Hopefully the vaccine will do some of that. I know there's still a lot of people who have concerns about the virus. And to the extent that we can start transitioning toward protecting those who are most vulnerable and encouraging those who are not to get back and engage in the economy. I think the faster we can get this economy ramped back up, the better. But that is going to be a process because a lot of people are still very frightened by it. So that's one thing. And we're going to be faced with a fairly large budget deficit. The revenue estimates, I think, paint an awfully rosy picture for the new fiscal year or the fiscal year we're in now. I know there's a number of businesses that are still off rather significantly, a lot of the restaurants. We certainly can't be raising taxes on them at this time. You know, we're going to have to restore the unemployment trust fund, but we need to look at, you know, how to do that judiciously without placing an undue burden on businesses who were good stewards of that fund in the past. And, you know, while these other businesses are getting ramped up. So this is a big challenge. There's a lot of components to it. I don't think there's any one good answer, but I think we're going to have to take it piece by piece and do the best we can to try to make the best sense out of it and go forward. So it's not an easy answer to this one. Certainly not a soundbite type answer, I'm afraid.
All right, thank you. And on to question number 2, and we're going to start with Representative Ruiz on this one. Passing a budget is the only constitutionally required act by the Kansas legislature, and 2021 is expected to be a difficult budget year. What are your priorities in the budgeting process, and how would you address any cuts which need to be made? Ms. Ruiz, you're muted.
Sorry. Right now, I don't know what the budget's going to look like. It's really difficult to answer this question without seeing what the budget might look like. I know, as Senator Thompson has already mentioned, that there's a lot of unknowns, and so I don't want to see cuts to education, to our public schools, to our universities, our higher education. We don't want to see cuts to that, but there's going to have to be some give and take, and I think we all know that it's going to take a lot of flexibility on all of our part, and to try to look at clean budgets and not try to tack on a lot of things that might be, things that don't need to really be in our budget. So I think that's, one of the, once we see what our budget's going to look like, and we are only going to be in the Capitol one day a week. So a lot of things will have to be done virtually. And so it's going to take us longer to look at those budgets and being able to, kind of take it apart. But I think there's some things for sure for me is I don't want to see any cuts to our education, our public schools.
Okay. Thank you. And next up, same question, Miss Cindy Neighbor. If you'd like me to repeat it, I'm happy to, but if not,
That's okay.
okay.
Anyway, I think right at this time, we've been fortunate up to at least this month with last month's revenues being up 13.6 million, and they were up the months before. So we are in a little bit better shape than several other states, even with COVID. And I think that comes from good management, from leadership, from the governor, from the administration. But are we going to have issues? Yes, we are. It's catching up with us. We're going to have to look at our revenues that may have to do with gaming, some of those issues where we could gain revenue. But I would not be in favor of cutting education at all. And I think our roads are starting to provide more jobs as far as they're not being robbed of their cash to come to the state. They're able to keep that, and they've been partnering with several cities and counties to get buy-in to extend those dollars. So I think any way that we can build partnerships with local entities to get things done is one way to help. And I think it's important that we look at each item and say, is this necessary this year, or can we wait, or can we address this in a different manner? So because we haven't seen the budget, so it's hard to know. And I know everybody has a different idea about where they think a cut could come, or something shouldn't happen or should happen. But until we have the numbers in front of us, I think it's difficult to specifically say this can go and this can stay.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Representative-elect Joella Hoye.
Yes, well, I definitely want to keep prioritizing our public schools. K through 12 education budget is going to be my area, so I'll be doing a deep dive. Our first committee meeting is on Wednesday, and we've already got commitments there that we need to keep in order to be adequately funding our schools. I surely want to keep prioritizing the transportation. The IKE transportation plan is really important to our state. And I really don't think that during a pandemic, we can afford major cuts to healthcare related areas, but it is very uncertain, and it is going to be tough. And I know that I'll be taking a deep look at that as soon as we are able to see the budget. And I've shared with you my priority areas, but that doesn't mean that there's that other areas of our core services aren't important as well.
Okay, thank you. Senator Thompson.
This is a tough one, but I think that first of all, we're going to have to do it through the committee process, and like some of the other people have mentioned, we're going to have to be very judicious and what we prioritize and what we can defer. And to be honest, the biggest piece of the pie in the state budget is the education fund. We're at 63% of the state general fund. We are sitting on about $2 billion in unencumbered funds. Now, part of the problem with the education budget is that some of those funds have to be channeled into certain areas, and you cannot move those monies around. I was on education committee last year, not this year, but perhaps we need to look at how we can move some of those unencumbered funds around to answer the educational needs during a time where it's going to be difficult at the state level, so that we can defer some of the costs through using those unencumbered funds while we're getting businesses and everybody else back up on their feet. So that's one possibility. But I think beyond that, when you're talking 63% of the budget, that's a huge piece of the pie. The other state functions other than the health and human services occupied a very tiny fraction. So it's going to be very difficult to cut in those areas. So I think you have to look at the areas that are biggest part of the budget and see how you can be judicious with those funds and how we can defer spending, at least for the time being, while we get the budget back on good standing. And it's a difficult task, and not something that's going to be happening very, very quickly, but we've got to do it. We have to do it. And I think it's important that people understand that we're going to be looking at that very closely.
All right, thank you, thank you, sir. And to close out this question, Representative Donohoe.
Okay. Unfortunately, I'm going to go on with the same thing with regard to education. You know, I still run a business, and I look at my business, and everybody's heard this, so I'll make it short. The point is there's no representative, there's no senator, there's not one person at that state capitol that can supply a plan to help keep taxes down, or to reduce taxes, or to, quote, eliminate taxes, which many Republicans run on. We're not going to raise taxes. It's impossible when you spend that much money on education. It's just absolutely impossible. So when we go into a session, and one of the things you always hear is compromise. We got to compromise. We're going to have, we got to learn to work together and compromise. And the first statement is, okay, I'm not going to compromise on 67% of the spending. Well, where are you going to go? Where are you going to get the revenue? We also now have a situation with the businesses closing, and we're losing that revenue. So we're spending 63%, which was before, of monies that were coming because the businesses were open. Now that we don't have that revenue, that's 60-some%, maybe up to 70-some% of the revenue that's coming in that's going specifically to one area. And we know we have to include, we want to increase help mental health. We want to do rural revitalization. We want broadband. And we got less dollars, no compromise. And, it's just not going to work. And what's the solution? The solution always is become more efficient, become more effective. What's the most efficient, effective way to educate children? Nobody has an answer to that. The answer is spend more money. Well, we don't think that that's necessarily the solution, and it can't be the solution going forward, because it makes everything else impossible. So, realistically, that's where we're at. People can say, no, we're not going to cut, but we're going to end up the same place we have every other year. We're not going to get the jobs. Kansas is not going to grow. We're not going to have the capital to fund things. And therefore, we stick in the same situation of lower employment, et cetera. So it's pretty simple, but it's got to be a compromise, period. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. On to question number 3, and Representative Neighbor, we're going to start with you here. Hopefully 2021 will be a year of economic recovery for the state of Kansas. What are your thoughts about economic development, and what, if any, Kansas-specific programs do you support and or oppose?
Well, I think we're lucky that we have an excellent person in the Commerce Department, who is now our Lieutenant Governor also. But they have brought more business to Kansas than we've seen in years. And when those businesses come, they've brought high-paying jobs. So that's something that we're going to have to continue to work on to make those places available. And to get those people to buy in that Kansas is a great place to be and work and raise a family. And we have got to make sure that we have the needed tools for any business that comes. And that's an educated workforce, but it's also broadband, because no one's going to really come if they don't have access to broadband that is quick, fast, and efficient. So those are two things that I think we need to do, and to maintain. Pardon my phone. And my secretary is getting. I'm sorry.
It's probably the president. You should take it.
Oh, no, I do not think so. But anyway, I think we have to look at that and continue to work to bring qualified, good businesses here, and also help those that are trying to make a comeback with either assistance loan wise, not having to pay those loans back if they can or can't, so they can get back on their feet too. So we've got to work with large and small and middle businesses on the level of what their needs are. And I think that's the way we'll get through 2021 and get back on our feet. So thank you.
Thank you. And same question to you, Representative-elect Hoye.
Yeah. I've done a lot of work in local government. Currently am also serving on the Lenexa Planning Commission. I've definitely seen what economic development incentives can do to help bring business to our communities, TIF, community improvement districts, items like that. I do support economic development and incentives, and just we need to also make sure that as our communities bring in business, create jobs, that we're also making sure that our local governments and municipalities can capture that growth. We've put some limitations on them, the way that the property tax lid is set up, so that they're not able to capture some of that growth that the state and the other taxing entities can capture. So I know we're going to be looking at that through tax committees, which I'm not a part of, but I do support economic development incentives, and our communities are driving that growth.
All right. Next up, Senator Thompson.
I'm sorry. Repeat the question for me, Joe.
Yep, no problem. Hopefully 2021 will be a year of economic recovery for the state of Kansas. What are your thoughts about economic development, and what, if any, Kansas specific programs do you support and or oppose?
That is a tough one. If you look at the STAR bonds, for example, there was only one of those that actually was successful. I'm not so sure that we should extend that program. In fact, there's a number of those that are going to end up with the taxpayers holding the bag. I think to the extent that we can, the government doesn't make jobs, the private industry does. So we've got to do whatever we can to support private industry getting back. And to a large extent, that kind of plays into the electrical costs. We need to bring down the costs in the state so that we can retain some of these larger businesses. There's the Goodyear plants down in South Central Kansas that are squawking about the high rates. We've also got oil wells that are being prematurely capped across the state because we have very, very high rate of electricity costs. So we're losing out on GDP there. So it's not a very sexy solution, but I think looking at the electrical costs that our people are paying is a big deal. And if you've got a big plant and you employ a lot of people, that's one of those costs that, if we can bring it down, will help you be able to maintain that business and keep it in the state of Kansas. So getting businesses back up on their feet is going to be the big thing. I'm not sure that the state can do that much. In fact, a lot of times there are unintended consequences. You make decisions about subsidizing one thing, and the opportunity costs are lost in another. So I'm very hesitant to go gray guns on some of these programs. I know they sound good when you're sitting in committee and somebody's doing testimony, but you also have to look at, you're devoting funds to one thing, but other things are being left behind. So that's a very, very tricky one. And we also have to be cognizant of who is paying the bills. If we give tax breaks to one group and somebody else doesn't get them, then it's a problem. So not an easy solution to that one.
All right, Representative Donohoe.
Yes, your question, it's a good question, but the question really should be, how do we increase economic development in the state of Kansas in lieu of the fact that right now we're doing everything possible to shut down small businesses and keep them from employment and everything? I mean, how in the world can we take one of the greatest drivers of jobs and everything in a state? We all know how important small businesses are, and we've shut them down. And then we ask, well, how can we create economic development? It's very simple. Help them get open. As I said before, if you have situations where you can go in and say to these small businesses, if you will do this, this, and this, you can open, then we've created all these, quote, new businesses, which will help the economic development. We've done exactly we put a Band-Aid out there and says, no, you're not going to be able to open your business because we're going to lump you in with everybody else regardless.
Oh, looks like Senator Donohoe froze up. Am I the only one seeing that? Okay, there we go.
Let's take capital and invest it so we can bring businesses in or whatever. And we don't want to bring businesses in necessarily to compete, but we have no capital because all of our capital is tied up in one area.
Well,
it's like, this is an absolute, and we go for it. So sorry, that's it.
Okay.
We've got number one, we've got to get the immunization taken care of immediately. The faster we do, the faster we can get these small businesses open, and the more growth we'll have, period.
All right, thank you. Senator Ruiz, we still want you to answer this question, but I realize that we're running up against the 9:30 time that we'd advertised to everybody. If you're all okay with it, we'd like to stay on and get these questions answered. Just try to stay concise in your answers, if you would, please. We've got at least one other question here that I think popped up in the Q&A as well. So, with that said, back to this question, Ms. Ruiz, about the economic recovery and economic development. Oh, you're on mute again, Ms. Ruiz.
Along with economic development, hand in hand goes with workforce development. And one of the questions that was in the Q&A here in our meeting was a person asking about incentives for housing. If we're going to increase our workforce development, therefore increase our economic development, we have a lack of housing. And so he was specifically asking for like incentives regarding building and businesses, that builders. And yes, being able to look at those incentives, we do. It's like we need to do two things. One is we do need to do Band-Aid on some things in order to get our businesses to open, but we also need to look at long-term at the same time, and that's. With our budget, I know it's going to be difficult to do that, but we've got to look at both at the same time. The Department of Commerce has brought in quite a bit of revenue to the state, even during this pandemic, which is, just really fantastic. There's been like $2 billion worth of new capital investment within the state. There's been 12,000 jobs, even though that seems like a small amount, but there's been at least 12,000 jobs that have been created. So my response is we have to look at how can we get small businesses to open up right away and long-term.
Okay, thank you. And the fourth question here, moving on, and we're going to be starting with you, Representative-elect Hoye. The Kansas Unemployment Trust Fund has been under tremendous stress due to the significant increase in claims resulting from COVID-19, and the fund's balance is quickly depleting. Kansas, like all other states, has seen a tremendous amount of fraudulent claims filed resulting from identity thefts, which has caused delay of payments to legitimate claimants, as well as fraud concerns for both employers and workers. What are your thoughts on how to best address these issues with Kansas Unemployment Insurance Program?
Yeah, this is a disaster situation here. Our unemployment system that we use is very out of date, and this is something that I hope we'll learn our lesson on. This is a core service of our state government. We need to modernize our state services, and I don't. My first day is Monday, so I don't want to make you all think I can solve this issue here on my own, but thousands of fraudulent claims have bogged down the system, and this is something that we need to urgently address and work together on, and prevent from happening in other areas as well in the future.
Okay, thank you. Next up, Senator Thompson.
Yeah, I know that the state is trying to address this as fast as they can. They put up some websites for people to be able to report the fraud. And I know I've been getting a number of emails from people who also have reported that they've had claims filed under their identity. Identity theft is huge. It's a big problem. We're just going to have to ask the agencies to find ways to shore that up. I'm not sure there's anything the legislature can actually do in that regard, other than force the agencies to find ways to make their claim process more secure. Look at identity theft issues. That's again a very tough one. I don't claim to have the answers on that one either. Identity theft has become a big problem for folks, and the issue is how secure is the computer that folks are using to file the claim. How secure everybody's social security numbers out there. It's ubiquitous and very difficult to deal with. But I think I've been encouraging people who've contacted me to let me know if they are aware of that claim, and then I've been forwarding that to the Department of Labor so they can deal with it, and they're up to speed on that. And then there's an element of personal responsibility and trying to be as secure as you possibly can with your own personal information. And unfortunately, it's all out there. Everybody's using their phones for everything these days. This is not an easy problem to solve, unfortunately. But certainly, as we find out more about how information being obtained, then we can talk to the agencies and see what we can do. But it obviously, that's going to be, with any kind of federal money, any kind of program like that, there's going to be a lot of fraud involved. There's waste and fraud in Medicare, Medicaid. We've got 6,000 people who claim to be 112 years old that are on Medicare, and we know there's nobody in the country. I think there's 40 people in the country that are 112 years old. So this is a problem in all areas of government, but certainly it's one we need to address.
All right, thank you. Representative Donohoe.
Yeah, I would just say we're going to have to wait for the IT guys to bring us something, then legislatively we'd have to look at it and pass whatever, because I have no solution. I mean, this is happening in all the states. Obviously, there's not any solutions out there, and I'm not going to purport to have one. So I think that's what we're going to have to do.
Okay. Representative Ruiz.
Oh, my mic is on.
Yep.
I am hoping that Representative Donohoe is correct. Almost all of the states are having issues with the system and with all the fraudulent claims. I'm hoping that there's going to be something either comes from the feds or all the states coming together and figuring out how we are going to fix this together. I fear that this will not be the last pandemic we're going to go through. And there's a lot of lessons to be learned now that we're going through this pandemic now. And it really, highlighted how antiquated our systems are. And we can't handle the volumes of people asking for unemployment. I think there's been some funding put in place to update the computer system. Along with that, being able to put in as many of security features in there to try to prevent some of the fraudulent claims that have come through. But in my head, I picture like a tornado, and you got this tornado whirling, and somewhere in the middle, they're trying to fix the computer system as in the midst of being in this tornado, and you can't do it. And so trying to, help people get through that system as much as we can. I know all of us have received calls and emails, and we've all been trying to help constituents navigate that system. But it's not, there's no quick fix to it. I thought that maybe changing secretaries with that has not made a difference at all. And so again, it just highlighted the things that we are not prepared for. And I hope that that'll be something we can shore up. And because now we can see that we're going to go through another pandemic. This is what's going to happen, and we need that system to be top notch as quickly as possible.
If I can just add one thing, one of the things I think we have to make sure.
Oh, yeah, just make it real quick. We're already 9 minutes over time.
One of the things I think we need to make sure is that we don't use this to beat the governor over the head or something. This is not a problem caused by her administration or anything. It's throughout the nation, and we got to work together to resolve this, period.
Okay, thank you. And last up, Representative Cindy Neighbor.
Thank you. Unfortunately, before this administration, the administration before shut down the possibility of doing upgrades in that department. And by doing that, we have a system that uses DOS. And I don't even know that anybody really understands DOS anymore because it's a very old platform. But and computers were purchased that were not compatible with our system. We needed to address this a long time ago, and it is not going to take just an IT person coming in. It's going to take money because computers are expensive. And if we are going to bring this up to date, you can't patchwork. You can't put a Band-Aid on it. You've got to get a system that's compatible, that has high security with it, and one that can do the job. And that's not going to happen overnight. But again, it's going to take funding, which I'm not so sure that we have enough to cover that right now.
All right, thank you. And we are now about 11 minutes over time. So we really appreciate you all staying on, both the panelists, our legislators here, as well as the folks tuned in watching this. So, but with that, we'll conclude the question and answer section. You can view our 2021 legislative agenda on the Chamber website. And right now, actually, I'm going to real quickly turn it over to Ann, our Chamber President, to share some of the upcoming events with the Shawnee Chamber.
Morning, everybody, and thank you to all the legislators that took time out of their schedule to join us today and answer some of our questions. I know, we all really appreciate your commitment to Shawnee and to the state of Kansas, so appreciate you being here with us today and the work that you'll be doing. It's going to be a tough year, so appreciate and Godspeed with all of what lies ahead of us in 2021. But with that said, we do have a few people I do also want to acknowledge. Our Investors Guild. We cannot simply do the work that we do without the financial support of our major investors. And you see them on your screen there: American Family Insurance, Advent Health, Elanco, Central Bank of the Midwest, the City of Shawnee, Waste Management, the Amos Family Funeral Home and Crematory, Complete Construction Service, Country Club Bank, Evergy, GBA, Overland Park Regional Medical Center, Shawnee Mission Forward, and Zardariki Development Corporation. A big thank you to all of those that are supporting us, supported us in 2020 and are continuing their support in 21. So we appreciate that. Next up, for our events, we will be doing our annual meeting virtual this year. So we're starting our 75th anniversary here at the Chamber. So we are excited to share a look back at that, and then also, look at what's in the future for Shawnee and the Chamber. So we hope that you will join us all virtually here on the 28th. We will start at 11:30 with a virtual networking component. So we will shift everybody into break rooms or breakout rooms so that you can have an opportunity to chat and maybe meet a few new people. And then at 12 o'clock, we will launch our YouTube video of our annual meeting. We will still have, hopefully, the plan is to have an in-person gathering, which we would normally be doing this time of year, but we are pushing that to the end of June 25th. And more on that information to come, but that will be an outdoor event at Shawnee Town to celebrate our 75th anniversary. So we hope to see all of you at all of those events. So appreciate your participation. We also are launching a new program this year, our affinity groups. It's a way for us to bring together focused individuals on various topics. Our first one is Women Inspiring Women. And so that first breakfast is Tuesday, January 19th at McLean's. We are limiting their small groups, so I think we're limiting them to 15 max, and we're getting close. But if you are a woman who is in a leadership role in your organization and would like to participate, please reach out to me or Marlene Shirley. And then January 20th, we will have our next AM Connect, and we will be doing that one virtually this month. So hope to see you at any or all of those events.
All right. Thank you, Ann. And that concludes today's Eggs and Issues virtual forum. Once again, big thank you to Evergy for sponsoring today's event. And an even bigger thank you to Representative Donohoe, Representative Ruiz, Representative-elect Hoye, Representative Neighbor, and Senator Thompson. We know that public service requires a tremendous sacrifice by you, and you have a lot of work ahead in the upcoming session, and we greatly appreciate what you do for our community in the state of Kansas. So the Shawnee Chamber Governmental Affairs Committee is going to continue to work very hard to be the advocate on behalf of the businesses in Shawnee. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.
Yeah.
You too.
Bye.
Good day.
Thank you.
See ya.